Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And this one's going to be a little bumpy, I think. We're talking about the 1890 National Scholars Program.
Okay.
Which, as you probably know, is for students at HBCUs,
right,
historically black colleges and universities, that are studying agriculture. And we're looking at press releases, news articles, official statements.
Trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of
Well,
noise.
yeah, because you've probably heard about these like funding cuts and political battles around this program.
Definitely.
And we're going to try and untangle all of that for you today and
Absolutely.
and hopefully give you some insight that you might not have caught.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when we talk about this program, it's important to remember this isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right?
These are real students
Yeah.
whose lives are directly impacted by this program.
Okay, so let's get into it then.
Yeah.
So the 1890 National Scholars Program, it's run by the USDA. It's been around for decades. It's not like a new thing.
Right.
And it provides full tuition and fees, room and board for these students at 19 HBCUs.
Okay.
And they're all, studying agriculture, could be anything from animal science, food safety to environmental management, you name it. So, you know, this is a life-changing opportunity for these students.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and, you know, this program has been so important for the USDA's efforts to diversify the agricultural workforce.
Yeah.
So it represents a significant investment in the future of these students and really the future of American agriculture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then in February of 2025, things kind of took a turn.
Yeah.
The program was abruptly put on hold.
Oh, wow.
Indefinitely suspended. Pending further review was the language that they used.
Okay.
And no explanation given.
And this was all happening under the Trump administration, right?
Yeah.
Which had been, you know, trying to cut back a lot of federal programs. And especially the ones that were focused on DEI.
Right. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Exactly.
So right away, people were like, is this scholarship program being targeted?
Right.
Or is it just like caught in this like larger effort?
Yeah. Was it intentional or was it just sort of like, oh, it happened to be in the way?
Yeah. And the USDA was totally silent on like their reasoning.
Interesting.
Yeah. You'd think they'd, at least say something.
Yeah.
I mean, this program affects almost 100 students every year.
Right. And I think that silence is what's so interesting about this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because it makes you wonder, are they trying to avoid accountability?
Right.
And it really just created this huge sense of uncertainty and fear for the students.
Exactly. Like, we're talking about 94 students whose dreams were basically put on hold.
Wow.
And they're left like, how are we going to pay for school?
Yeah.
Can we even keep going?
Right. Absolutely.
It must have been awful.
And, Senator John Ossoff from Georgia, where several of these HBCUs are.
Right.
He was really outspoken about it.
Yeah.
He talked about how this funding freeze was just devastating for students in his state.
Yeah.
And how some of them were having to make these, really difficult choices about their future because of it.
It just really puts like a face on this whole situation. Like these aren't just numbers. These are real people whose lives are like totally upended.
Right.
But, and here's where it gets interesting.
Right.
The backlash was really fast.
Yeah.
And it came from both sides, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
So you had like lawmakers from both parties.
Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah. Criticizing the USDA. They're demanding answers.
Yeah.
They want the program reinstated.
Right.
And Representative Alma, who she actually helped found this bipartisan HBCU caucus in Congress.
Oh, wow.
She was like a really big voice in this whole thing.
Okay, so they were putting on the pressure.
Yeah. And guess what?
Well,
it worked.
Really?
A few days after the program was suspended, the USDA just quietly reopened the application process.
Oh, wow. So they didn't really make a big announcement or anything.
No, they didn't say anything.
Wow.
It was just like, back on.
Interesting. That's almost like they're trying to sweep it under the rug.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, what was happening behind the scenes.
Right. Where were those conversations like?
Yeah. Was there a big debate within the administration?
Yeah.
Or did they just realize oh, this looks really bad,
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think that quick turnaround really shows you that all of that public outcry and the pressure that had an effect.
Yeah.
It shows you what happens when people speak up and hold those in power accountable.
So on the one hand, it's like, yay, victory.
Yeah.
The program's back. Students can finally relax.
Right.
But then you have this question, right? Was it a real change of heart? Or was it just to quiet everybody down?
That's a good question because, you know, we have to think about the Trump administration's whole approach to DEI programs.
Yeah.
They were really going after them, you know.
Right.
They were dismantling all these initiatives.
Yeah.
So it makes you think, could this scholarship program be at risk again in the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, are they really going to let this go?
Right.
Or are they just waiting for the right moment?
Exactly. And that's a question that's going to keep coming up.
Definitely.
As we look at these kinds of programs moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really makes you think about, like, the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Like, what does this mean for, you know, HBCUs, for agricultural education, for diversity and inclusion in, like, a field that's so important to the country.
This isn't just some small thing. This has bigger implications.
Yeah.
And I think what this whole incident with the 1890 Scholars Program shows us is that we really need to ask ourselves some tough questions about, you know, the government's role in supporting these institutions and these goals, you know.
Right.
Like, is it enough to just, like, bring a program back after it's been threatened? Or do we need to be, like, more proactive about protecting these programs and making sure that they're around for a long time?
And how do we make sure that, like, this doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
I mean, these students were, like, really put through it.
Right. They were left hanging.
Yeah.
And I think it really highlights the need for, like, way more transparency and accountability from, you know, from the people in charge.
Right.
Like, if the USDA had just said why they were doing this, maybe it wouldn't have been so bad.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like they just weren't communicating at all.
Right. Transparency and communication, two things that are just, like, missing these days. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, the good thing is this situation also shows how important it is to speak up. You know, all those lawmakers, the advocacy groups, the people who called their representatives, they all made a difference.
Yeah.
It shows that we can actually make a difference.
It's powerful.
Even when things seem really, really bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you can't just, like, sit back and assume that these programs are always going to be there.
Exactly.
You got to, like...
You got to fight for them.
Fight for it, yeah.
Stay engaged.
Yeah.
And I think that starts with staying informed, right? Like, really understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
You know?
Understanding the issues.
Calling your representatives.
Right.
Letting them know what you think.
Yeah.
Supporting the organizations that are working on these issues.
It's about making your voice heard.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the things that I really took away from this whole episode is that, like, policy decisions, they have real consequences.
They do.
It's not just, like, something happening in Washington. This affects people's lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're not just abstract ideas. They have real impacts.
Yeah. Their opportunities, their dreams.
Right. And we saw that firsthand here.
Exactly.
With this scholarship program.
It's like a small decision.
Yeah.
But it almost ruined the lives of, like, 100 students.
Right. And it just shows how important it is to pay attention to these issues.
Absolutely.
Like education, equity, opportunity.
Yeah. You can't be complacent.
No, you can't just assume things will work out.
Right.
You have to be active.
We all have a role to play.
Yeah, we all have a responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. So where do we go from here? We talked about the program and the suspension and the reinstatement and the politics of it all and how it affected students. What are some, like, key takeaways for you from all of this? And, like, what questions should our listeners be asking themselves?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that no program is really safe. You know, this one's been around for decades, and they still put it on hold with, like, no explanation. It really shows how important it is to be aware and fight for the things that we care about. What about for you? What stood out to you?
I think for me, it was just seeing how much power we have when we actually use our voices. Like, all those lawmakers who spoke up and the organizations raising awareness and the people calling their representatives, that all made a difference. You know, it shows that even when it seems impossible, we can actually change things if we work together.
Yeah, totally. And I think this deep dive gives our listeners some interesting things to look into, you know, like they could look up the history of this scholarship program or learn more about the HBCUs that were affected by this, or even just see how DEI programs did under the Trump administration.
And it's not over, you know, like, what happens next with this program? Will they try to do this again? We should all be paying attention to this.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the information, right? It's about starting a conversation about how important education is and diversity and making sure everyone has the same chances. We need to keep talking about this.
So to everyone listening, we say, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed. Your voice matters, and what you do can make a real difference.
Keep learning and asking questions and pushing for a world where everyone has the chance to succeed.
Until next time.